Okay, here's how it went down. I got a date with the Carpisi twins. I guess technically 2 dates. Now, I didn't tell Jan that Nan was coming, and Nan didn't know that Jan was coming. Okay, so far normal, right? Anyway, they dumped me. And now I'm stuck with these tickets to a play about a man with half a face. Naturally, I thought of you people.
Charlie, this is so unexpected. It's really very sweet of you, and I'm touched.
Hey, settle down, buddy. You'd think I'd given you my spaghetti wrestling tickets.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what are we talking about tonight?
Tonight, it is all about best friend gigolos.
Sure.
Or like the lecherous neighbor, or the like Lothario next door.
Sitcom Horndogs.
That's right.
How
Sitcom
I am
Horndogs.
choosing to refer to
I like it.
Yes, not all, but many sitcoms have a very horny character.
That's right.
Why is that? Many sitcoms, such as anything on the Fox network from its inception through to current day.
But even before that.
Yeah, look, sitcoms like to talk about what goes on between the sheets, you might say.
What goes on behind closed doors
in
there?
the back seat.
Oh, in the back seat. Oh, not stuck on first base here.
Yeah, look, sitcoms have lots to say about sex.
Or lots to kind of nod at, right?
Yes.
Wink at. Sometimes they don't even say anything, especially in the older ones.
Yes, and they love to put that stuff in the mouth of some horned up character, like you said, often a friend, a neighbor, a coworker.
Right.
And if I'm going to be a little pretentious here for a second and say that it's kind of like sitcoms like to do what Dr. Freud might describe as the id, the ego, and the superego.
Ooh,
right?
Because those things are the archetypes that can create conflict, and they're relatable, right? Because
Exactly.
we all have those inside ourselves.
We all have those inside us, and a lot of times what these sitcom casts like to do is sort of break up the cast, the group, into the different aspects of a person. Your id, of course, is all of your lust, your primal desires, just all of the sort of cravings without any reason. Your ego is like your natural sense of right and wrong, your morality, or in the sitcom world, I would argue, the people who we relate to, the people who seem normal. And then the superego is all the rules and regulations and society sort of telling you what to do and putting you in your place. And
the nagging wife.
Well, I was going to say it's more like the uptight, shy, that's your Minsky or your Carltons or your, people like that. And also when dealing with young people, it's the parents, it's the authority figures.
Yeah.
And so, that sort of breakdown takes all kinds of different forms, but a lot of times we have in a show, whether it's main character, minor character, whatever, somebody who just really represents that lead me to the poon, as the kids say.
Lead me to the poon. Yes, the kids definitely say that.
Oh, I hear them all the time. So I'll ask you, before we get into the sitcom version of this, did you have this ever in your life? Was there a friend? Was there somebody that's like, this person, their function is to always be pushing for for chase and tail, or for...
So I think it was me.
Fair enough.
I'm the Samantha.
Okay.
You know, if we go back all the years, and any of my friends from high school can corroborate. Yes, I'm the Samantha. I've kind of always been that, even before being the Samantha was a thing. You know, obviously we were in high school long before Sex and the City was on television. But yeah, definitely. So I think it was me. I was a drama kid, so kind of everybody, you know, liked talking about sex and would bring the conversation back to sex. But in college, my group of friends called me Sex Pot Amy because I always brought the conversation around to that, or I always made the sexual joke. I was an early adopter of saying giggity instead of that's what she said, because I was like, that's what she said is lame and stupid, and it's been played out.
Yeah, it's quoting one of the notable Horndogs.
Exactly. So, yep, I was an early adopter of that, was, you know, known for being like giggity. Yeah. In inappropriate settings as well, like, you know, at the Thanksgiving dinner table with all the family, so only the cousins got it and all the grown-ups were like, what? But yep, I think it was me, and I might be a little embarrassed about that, but that's okay.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I didn't consider myself. Certainly, as a teenager, I was not the one experiencing any sexuality, but I did have that thing of like, oh, I'm going to make jokes about it and stuff. Right. But what I would say is I feel like, particularly as a young man, like some of the, you know, characters on these sitcoms, I was very annoyed that I didn't have this, that my other friends tended to be just as sort of ineffectual as me, you know, and I had certain friends that were more overachieving than others, but I lived with my brother for a while when we were in our 20s. And
he was a musician, so he like was...
But even so...
No, not so much.
I noticed with him how he had his friends that he would go out with, and it tended to be the same sort of deal with a lot of us. You go out, have a good time or whatever, this and that, you know, maybe have a crazy story, usually end up like eating pizza somewhere at 2 a.m. or something. And then he started hanging out with this one particular guy from one of his bands that was like more so than anyone else, like really serious about chasing the coos, you know, about just about chasing the strange, you know.
God, I love your sayings.
And like when he switched from hanging out mostly with those other guys who also were very fun, outgoing guys, to hanging out with this particular dude that I'm thinking of, within a few weeks he had met the woman who is now his wife.
I thought you were gonna say he like went through his phase of like, all right,
maybe there was some of that too, but it was just like him being with somebody who was so much more like proactive and like, no, we're doing this. We're not sitting around and hanging out with each other. We're finding us some ladies.
And him also being kind of a relationship guy, of guy. He was like, oh, I met a great girl. This is great. Oh, I'm never letting go.
Yeah. He jumped off that train once he found somebody, but I never had that person. I was always like...
You needed a wingman.
Yeah, exactly.
You needed Barney Stinson. Have you met Jay?
Yeah, yes. And so...
You needed me. Yes. I was the wingman.
It took me years to find my wingman /
Yeah, except
interest.
for that sucks because I wouldn't wingman you, but oh well.
So, yes, all right. I think we've laid the groundwork sufficiently. Let's get into it. We're each going to sort of talk about 5 sitcom horndogs.
That's right.
You know, we're picking the ones that are near and dear to us. I'll say for me, there's going to be a spectrum of like people who are actual lotharios, people who are your ladies' man or your high status sexy lady, and the people who are more aspirational, who are maybe more,
I like that. Okay.
Motivated by carnal desires, but not necessarily
as successful.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. Okay, and so for me, I had a really hard time with this. Like I ended up with basically a spreadsheet spreadsheet and categories of all the different archetypes that kind of fall, like the sub archetypes that fall into this main like character. And and so, you know, like I've got a little bit of everything. I've got the surprise, like, you know, surprise, she's horny. And I've got the like, you know, the sexy grandma, the grandma that's every time they have a speech or they're in a scene, there's going to be at least one, if not two, sex jokes that they're making about wanting to like go find some dudes. So, yep, I've got all kinds here.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go first. Give me your first horn dog.
Okay, so my first horn dog is actually the one that like made me think of this. And I think this is the character that Quagmire is the most based on because of that big, broad smile. Yeah. It's David Leisure. His character is Charlie Dietz from Empty Nest. He is the neighbor that in that episode we watched, he was like super mean.
Yeah, wasn't he played by William Devane in the pilot?
Oh, maybe? I feel like, I don't think so. I think it's David Leisure, and he was the one that was always, it's Joe Azuzu. He always played that guy. Right. I know that was weird where like that pilot was actually
maybe
a backdoor pilot.
For some reason I remember William Devane being in the pilot or the backdoor pilot. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I don't
continue.
remember.
I
but
remember
anyway,
this character.
So David Leisure, that's the guy. He may or may not have, I thought he was the only one that didn't get replaced, and that's what made that kind of funny when they moved it over. They were like, oh yeah, we really like this asshole horn dog guy. So yeah, you might know him better from the Isuzu commercials. He was Joe Azuzu for like the 80s, like throughout the 80s and 90s. And then again, they brought him back in like 99 to the early 2000s as Joe Azuzu. It's kind of like Mayhem now.
The insurance thing.
Where in these Isuzu commercials, he was like this smarmy salesman with this big, broad smile that would always make outlandish claims about what Isuzu could do. And then they would have the font like pop up next to him, like, this car can't actually do that. Don't listen. Like, you know, don't worry. Like this, you know, this car is so good, it doesn't need a smarmy salesman or whatever. But so that is the guy who played Charlie Dietz, the next door neighbor. So basically Empty Nest, they were the Golden Girls next door neighbors, right? And then on the other side of them, like on their other neighbors, was this guy, Charlie Dietz. And I feel like this character is always like a pilot or a doctor or like some sort of traveling salesman. So they like pop in and out of the main character's world and they just say horrible things, right? Like, and usually horny things. And that is Charlie Dietz in Empty Nest. And like I said, he's got that big broad smile just like Quagmire does. So I think there's definitely some crossover there.
Yeah, I remember this character. I remember him being kind of repellent.
Yes.
Maybe using words like odious to describe him. That pilot of Empty Nest was pretty rough, as I recall. That's another one where we should have used the Becker rule and gone for season 3 instead of season 1. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Him, and there's 2 or 3 other characters that I don't want to mention unless they come up later in our list, but I feel like those 80s sitcoms, family sitcoms, especially household families, where it's not so much about impressionable young people. So this character can just kind of pop in and really just be kind
horrible.
of like off the rails. Yeah. And often they're not really involved in the story except in some sort of ancillary way.
Exactly. And that is like, to me, that is like the pinnacle of this character. Like, for some reason, I have Ted McGinley in my head as being this kind of person in a bunch of shows. Yeah. But he's more like the guy, you know, he's known for every time a show jumps the shark, it's because he joins. Yeah. But he often has that sort of smarmy vibe as well.
Yeah. The thing of him being the neighbor, it reminds me of the State sketch, the Sideways House, which is like this funny, quick little sketch on the MTV State show in the 90s, where it's like a sitcom. And they do a funny little song at the beginning. We live in a sideways house. But then as soon as it starts, Thomas Lennon walks in and discovers his kid's like broken neck, dead, lying in the middle of the floor, and he's like wailing in misery. But the laugh track is going. It's that very sort of 90s kind of humor.
Yeah.
But then they have Michael Ian Black pop his head into the sideways window, and be like, "Well, sorry guys, I got a date with a couple of stewardesses." Ba-boom, ba-boom.
Exactly. That's this character. Like,
Yeah.
it's done so much that it's parodied.
Yeah.
Like, I love it. That's great.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's a good one to start. My first one is sort of on the other side of things. This is a younger character. I feel like this was one of the first times that I really was exposed to this trope. And I learned a lot from this young man.
Oh, okay.
His name was Vincent Del Pino.
I don't remember Vinny chasing tail that much, but okay.
Oh, yeah, totally. So Vinny Del Pino was Doogie Howser's best friend on Doogie Howser MD, and he would crawl into his bedroom window all the time.
A la Sam from Clarissa Explains It All, because
Exactly.
best friends don't use doors.
Yeah, or the creepy boyfriend from Scream. And,
Also that.
Doogie was obviously this prodigy who was a doctor, even though he was a teenager, but he was trying to have a normal life. And he had this girlfriend, Wanda, who I think at the beginning he just has a crush on her, and then he finally gets her. But Vinny, he's a big part of this show. And I would say, especially for that time, as sitcoms go, this was a very, it was on the drama side of sitcoms. No laugh tracks, single camera
And
production.
all, the lesson and
Yes,
everything
it
for
had
him
a
writing
fairly-
and the
yeah.
diary at the end.
It had a serious tone, even though it was considered a half-hour sitcom. And so Vinny really represented that sort of he had to be the mentality of the normal teenager, because Doogie didn't go to school. And so Vinny represented to Doogie and to you, the viewer, the entire world of hey, Doog, there's a beach party going on this weekend. Susie Belluti is going to be there. Susie Belluti, he just represented that whole side of things. And then you had the parents and everybody else to balance
this
it
was
out.
one of those shows that I think of the Wonder Years as well, right? Where it was it was one of these shows where it was made for families to watch together. So there was enough appeal to young people. I mean, it had this idea that there were still people who had one TV households.
Yeah.
And we were that one TV household. And so it was networks were kind of constantly looking for these shows that could bridge the generations. And you always talk about how you were just not interested in any of that stuff. And you were always just interested in the kid kind of things. And it's interesting to me, though, that the Doogie Howser penetrated that, and actually you watched that too, even though for us that was a family show.
Oh, but it was about a kid.
Oh yeah, it was.
I mean,
but
that's
it was,
why I watched it.
it was one of those ones that it was a little you both could watch it because it was kid in a grown-up world.
But if you recall, the very first shot of the theme song is his sneakers walking down the hospital hallway, just to let you know you're dealing with a youngster.
It's a kid doctor.
He graduated Harvard at 12 years old, but he can't wear normal adult shoes. Yeah, Vinny was very influential in the way I dressed in middle school, early 90s. He did the thing of wearing the very loud button-down shirt or collared shirt open, and then the, sort of simple white t-shirt underneath, or not white even, a lot of times some sort of loud, yellow or cyan sort of color. And I thought that was the bee's knees. I put a lot of gel and hairspray and stuff in my hair at the beginning of middle school because I thought that's what Vinny wanted me to do.
He had a bracelet, WWVD.
I was really into Doogie Howser, and I just thought, Vinny was very funny, and I kind of bought into that model of, masculinity. It's also interesting that he was played by Max Casella, who it was well known at that time that he was like 32 when they were filming that.
Oh, he was old? I didn't know that.
And that was like, I remember thinking that was so strange. Like, why? How? He must be like, have some sort of condition, you know? And now I've come full circle where it's like, oh yeah, somebody's in their 30s. They look like a teenager anyway. Like they all look so young. But yes, he was known to be much older.
He's 58 years old.
Yes, he was much older than the rest of them. He was just a very young looking.
He had a baby
guy.
face for sure, yeah.
And his whole mannerisms, he was so skinny, you know, he was in Newsies at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so it's just interesting, like they gave the best man the part for whatever reason. It's just interesting that they went with somebody so much older that for whatever reason they felt like he could exude, you know, Vinny's got that very manic sort of desperate, you know, like that's kind of what I was thinking of when I said before some of them are more aspirational.
Right.
Vinny is a virgin, I think, at least at the start of the show. He's just horned up. He's a teenager. He's all hormones.
Yeah, for a while, because in the episode that we watched where he was delivering the baby in the elevator, he had never seen a vagina before.
Yes.
And the woman who was having the baby was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, so exactly. He's sort of just, you know, he's just a very lovable character. It's a very gentle tone his sort of horniness takes.
Yeah.
And it is just interesting to me that they went with an older actor for that. Like I said, he represented that Greek chorus of normality and like the sort of sometimes the devil on Doogie's shoulder. And he was just a very lovable performance. You know?
Yep. All right. So here's my number 4. Mm-hmm. I'm sticking with the like neighbor who is an ancillary character who just like pops their head in and has something horny to say, maybe 2 horny things to say, and then leaves. But this one isn't out there chasing tail. She is a frustrated wife, and that is Mrs. Roper from Three's Company. Yeah. Every time she comes in, she's like, "This guy, if only he would stick it to me." Yeah. And all the cast of, you know, the younger characters is like, "Geesh, why does she keep talking about sex?"
Yeah, I remember being introduced to this character when we watched the first episode for our British imports, because we had. Did the British version have this too? I'm sure it did. They were pretty close.
Yeah,
right?
They were pretty close.
Man of the House.
Yeah, Man of the House. I don't really remember. I mean, they had, like, she was in that original episode, but yeah, and the British version, everybody was hornier like, because that, like, more is allowed on British television still today than what's allowed on American television. So yeah, but gosh, you know, I don't remember. I think Mrs. Roper is just so in my mind with that. It's almost like an Annie wig that she wears. It's like those tight red curls, and she always has, you know, very bobbly, loud costume jewelry on, like plastic looking, and a house coat. Yeah. And she's just like, "Oh, if only this man would get off that ladder and get up inside me." And you're just like, Jesus! Well, and so it's the horny grandma. That's what it is.
It's the undersexed wife, and a lot of times I feel like it's a sort of verbal setup and punchline where he'll be like, you know, "I overcooked the buns," and she'll be like, "You haven't cooked my buns in 10 years. Or something like that.
Right.
Something like that.
And that is where you like, so characters like this gave way to the Peg Bundys.
Well, I was just going to say, I didn't really watch Three's Company, so my version of this I'm more familiar with is Peg Bundy.
Right.
Where she's, I guess, a little younger. Yes. She's meant to be a little more of this sort of like tacky housewife.
Yes.
But it's that same thing of like, "Oh, why don't you ever want to get into it?" You know?
Right. And he wants to have sex, but just with other women.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes.
He's like, "You're gross." Ooh, she's hot.
Yeah, and we talked about when we did that show how it's like a little sort of inexplicable. That,
right,
like,
I know.
He finds her unattractive.
Because Katie Sagal is really hot. So.
But yeah, no, that's a good one. And that does, in its own weird way, give like agency to the older women of the sitcom world, that they get to be horned up and sassy and all that.
That's right. Well, and that's like, again, that is, a Blanche Devereaux kind of like, you think about the older woman. It's, it's kind of ironic that she's so horned up because she is, supposed to be so much older than all, our main characters that we're supposed to be kind of getting, getting to understand.
Yeah. Here's my next one. Now, this is a different one. This is kind of a zag. This is sort of the opposite. This is the opposite from the aspirational version in the sense that this is somebody who is so iconically charismatic that they don't even have to be horny. Like, they're so sexed up that it's almost like a magical power.
I think I know who you're going to say.
So this is a pretty iconic sitcom character. I'm talking about Mr. Arthur Fonzarelli.
Yep, I knew it. I knew you were going to say the Fonz. That's so interesting.
So yeah, Fonzie, of course. Again, this is not the tacky neighbor that comes in and says, oh my God, lead me to the to the muff.
And I tended to kind of try to stay away from guys like the Fonz because they have so much heart. They are so layered.
Well, yes. And what is so interesting about him in particular is he's such an interesting character. Obviously, we're talking about an older sitcom than most of the others we've talked about. And like everyone knows, it's set even further in the past. Happy Days was made in the 70s. It's set in the 50s. And so what makes Fonzie such an interesting character is he is coded as antisocial. He is a greaser, right?
Yeah.
In a time, he's a high school dropout. He's sort of at a glance meant to be the bad boy. And yet, Henry Winkler's performance and just the decisions that they make with the character over time, he is very benevolent and he almost is never doing anything harmful or bad. Like, most of the episodes are him going like, hey, Fonzie doesn't mess with drugs. Hey, Fonzie wouldn't do anything like that. And you think that's cool? I'll tell you what's cool. Being nice to people.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he is the anti-Barney Stinson, right?
Yeah, but
he would never hurt someone.
No,
he's like, I'm a ladies' man, but I treat him right.
But that's the thing, is like, he does and he doesn't. Like, we've remarked about how when we watch the Happy Days episodes, one of the things that doesn't age super well, even though it is just a silly joke, is how he snaps his fingers and the girls come running and whatever. What makes him still fit into this category in a broad sense for me is that he still is a guy defined by his libido. He still is like, Fonzie is a ladies' man, first and foremost.
Right.
His whole thing is like, oh, I got, on a different day of the week, I got, Susie on Monday and Francie on Monday night, and all his weird little books. And
so I'm kind of getting a vibe from you that like these Italian stallion guys are the ones that you really think have the goods.
Yeah, we'll see if that trend continues, if they're all Italian. And of course, in real life, he's Jewish.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, Fonzie, like I said, he rejects most of the bad behavior, but he just has this, I feel like he introduces this idea, or at least sort of like modernizes it, of like the guy whose charisma is magical. And like that's part of the comedy of the show, is how effortless it is for him.
And we've talked about Joey Tribbiani, who's another one of these types of characters that I, again, like Fonzie, I was like, no, I got to stay away from him because he's got layers. And there was like, we've talked about how on Friends they made specific choices to make him, kind of like a himbo, as well as
particularly in after the first season, when they realized that
he's going to be awful if he
off-putting.
Yeah, he's going to be awful if this is all he is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that I think the choices that Matt LeBlanc and some of the other characters around him helped him to make was to make him more like Fonzie.
Yeah, and Fonzie's role in that show is also so sort of liquid, because the initial role I think he's supposed to have is the main characters are, at least in terms of the friends,
right? They're these like high school,
it's
good
Richie,
boys,
Potsy, and Ralphie. And they're all a bunch of, they don't know what's
mouth.
what. Yeah. And then Fonzie represents this maturity that's like out of reach for them. He's older, but he's a dropout and he knows
the family's
everything.
Worried about their associating with him. And then he ends up living over the garage because he's a good guy.
That's the thing is after a few years, it's just like for all intents and purposes, he could be the uncle in one episode. He could be another one of the friends. He could be like, he's just in the mix as like this character. And he has sort of wisdom beyond his years. But yeah, I think especially initially, that is his role to sort of represent, like if you're a kid in the 50s who knew what's what and knew how to, get it on with the ladies in the backseat or whatever, like that's Fonzie.
All right. Okay, so we're up to my number 3, and I plopped this guy right here in the middle. Not because I actually think, I think he could be a quintessential, but the reason that he's a quintessential Lothario is that he is created as an amalgam of all of these characters that came before him and continues to be because the show is still on the air. It's Quagmire.
Nice.
Giggity goo, right? So Quagmire is a pilot, right? He is created as like this send up of this type, right? Like that's what he is. And the reason he can't go any higher than number 3 is that he is a legitimate sex offender.
Fair enough. Well, we've talked before about how the animated shows can get away with things that live action can't, and I'd go so far as to say that that's probably an example of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously we have yet to cover any Seth MacFarlane joint on the podcast so far. We rarely cover animation, but we do once in a while. We do consider them sitcoms, like The Simpsons and Bob's Burgers.
For sure, Bob's Burgers for sure.
And Family Guy, even just the title, like that's obviously playing into the sitcom vibe.
Yes, absolutely. Family Guy does. I think where Family Guy takes a step in the South Park direction, making it just a little bit more out there, is that the talking dog, not to say that that's a very Alf kind of move that they have going on, right? But the talking dog and the talking baby. So it's like you want to talk about all the different archetypes of, wacky sitcoms. They've dumped them all in there. Yeah. And so because that one is so much more heightened, I think that's why it's hard to kind of fit it in sometimes to our normal like sitcom. What's the trope this week? I will say though that I think Family Guy does musical episodes better than anybody else.
Yeah, that's because MacFarlane is a true music dude.
Oh man, and I'm going to say it, and I know it's controversial because Trey Parker and Matt Stone have won Tonys for their musicals or for their musical, but I think Seth MacFarlane does it better. I like the Family Guy musical episodes better than the South Park musical episodes.
Well, here's what I'll say. And we're comparing apples to oranges for various reasons. MacFarlane doesn't have a Broadway show, and he doesn't have a feature film with the kind of budget that a feature film would have, as opposed to an episode of TV. To me, the movie South Park, bigger, longer, uncut,
not comparing it to that. That's great. It's very funny. Yes,
the music. But yeah, it's funny what you say about the sort of tone and realism of the show, because it's true. You have Family Guy on one end of that, and then of course things like Rick and Morty and Futurama that take it even further, and then you have The Simpsons that is mostly down to earth, but they do some wacky stuff here and there. And then you have something like Bob's Burgers, where I've noticed they really don't do any, they don't go to outer space or anything. It is very down to earth. They have field trips to the local museum as like the craziest thing that'll happen, and all of them do musical episodes. So but in terms of Quagmire, I was never like super into Family Guy, but I've definitely caught it, and I will sort of go to bat for Seth MacFarlane in the way that we talk all the time about the different tones that these shows can take. And of course, he was at the height of his powers in the early 2000s when everything was mean and nasty. Seth MacFarlane is one that I will say his humor has a really nasty edge to it sometimes that is smart and earned, largely. And it has something to say, and that's not to say
Stewie is mean as hell, but I don't know.
And just some of the humor.
Like it. It's funny.
There are moments in Family Guy that are truly disturbing in ways that can get under your skin. But again, it's interesting and never comes across as empty-headed.
Right.
And Quagmire, totally, no question. He is one of the quintessential horn dogs of our time. All right.
Your number 3.
So my number 3 is switching up the genders a little, and this is not somebody who's popping in from the side or your friend at school. This is part of the main cast, where we've got another case of sort of like we were talking about at the beginning, 3 or 4 characters that are sort of breaking off the psyche into different comic extremes. In this case, we're talking about 4, let's just say 4 lovely old gals living together in Miami, and one of them is horny AF, and her name is Blanche Devereaux.
I love it. Blanche went off and on my list, and the only reason she didn't end up, I think, on my list is because there's so many other there are so many other little aspects of this trope that I wanted to kind of grab onto. I love Blanche. She is the OG Samantha, right? And what I love even more about it is that Sue Ann Nevins, who Betty White played on Mary Tyler Moore, is like the kernel, the seed that grew into Blanche Devereaux. And they tell the story of how they had Betty White coming in to read for Blanche, and they had Rue McClanahan coming in to read for Rose. And they both were like, I think I want to read the other part. And that's how it ended up that way, because Betty White had already played, the Sue Ann Nevins, who is kind of a horny character, the only real horny character in Mary Tyler Moore. That wasn't
her whole thing, though, to be fair.
No,
she had a specific weird
biting kind of thing, but there is, and we haven't watched any of these episodes yet, so you probably don't know this, because I know you don't know this show very well, but she, not an episode goes by, even in the episodes that we've watched, where Betty White doesn't get a dirty joke in as Sue Ann Evans, and that she brought that back as her character as she got even older after Golden Girls, that she always was able to get in a horny joke.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? And so, but that's been true for her all those years. And so she wanted Rose so that she wouldn't be typecast into that.
Yeah, she could be guileless.
Exactly, and doing something else. And so anyway, I just love that. I'm so glad you have Blanche on your list. Yeah, because I was regretting, but not regretting not having her.
Yeah, obviously Blanche is her whole own brand of horniness. She brings that Southern dame vibe. Yes. That whole thing of I do declare, referring to everybody as, Mr. Burt Reynolds, that thing. And what's interesting about her, again, contrasting her to these other ones, where because she's on the other side of the life spectrum as young Vinny, and even Arthur Fonzarelli is supposed to be a teenager or a 20-year-old guy. And so it's instead of having to sort of learn the do's and don'ts of sex and sort of figure out where you stand and get the hang of it, she's at a stage in life where all she wants to do is talk about it, and it's sort of irrelevant. And everyone's kind of going yeah, we know you slept with every guy in town. We don't care. Move on. And I know that part of this impression is because we haven't really, even though we've covered the Golden Girls a lot now, we tend to not watch ones that really focus on her. But it's funny how, in general, her sexuality is mostly verbal. It's mostly just her going like, oh, that reminds me of the time that I met Mr. Washington.
Yeah.
Like, it's just anecdotes and little references and stories and stuff. But that's just sort of like, that's her thing.
It's not Weeds, right? Like, it's not like on Showtime or whatever. But
also it's because it's like, again, I think in certain episodes she would have more modern day romances, but it's more like she is defined by all of these conquests of her past,
right?
You know,
and her stories about those things.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, I feel like she inspired generations of horny older ladies to, speak their minds.
All right, so my number 2 debuted on the same day as Golden Girls.
Interesting.
Was to me, such an iconic character that when I saw her in later sitcoms, I was confused because I thought that was just like she was playing herself and that was like just her character.
She was like Pee Wee Herman, like
right.
The line between
Absolutely.
character.
And it's funny that you mentioned Pee Wee Herman because we watched her play opposite Pee Wee Herman. And I am talking about Jack A herself in 227 as Sandra Clark. In my mind, as a young kid in the 80s, I thought Jack A was Jack A. I did not realize that in 227 she had a different name. And this character that basically between her and Blanche Devereaux birthed and gave us Karen Walker later in Will and Grace.
Yeah.
Like, she is all about the fancy clothes and the moneyed man. And I loved every minute of it. She played it so well. Like I said, I was confused when I watched Sister Sister that she wasn't playing that character. I just thought that was like her shtick.
That's funny, yeah. Or kind of like Mr. T in Rocky, where like he's already a character. He's already Mr. T, and then he's playing like some, like, forget who it is. Yeah, that's funny. Jack A, and she's the mom in Sister Sister.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I love her. I guess we watched 227 when Pee Wee Herman showed up, right? And then also when Bobby Brown showed up,
yes,
was that 227?
That was 227,
okay.
Where we got to see Regina King for the first time because she wasn't in the episode with Pee Wee Herman.
So I don't remember her being that horny in those.
Well, she's just always talking about she's going to miss a date.
Okay.
She's always dressed and she's going to miss a date. And tonight she had 2 dates.
Yeah.
Like it is like Blanche in that it's oftentimes she's talking about, instead of conquests of her past, she's talking about current conquests that are just off screen.
Yeah.
Because she's not the main character, but her antics, her sexual antics are. And in just like with Blanche, it is kind of mixed up in money as well. Like, I want you, I'm all about the men, the sex, and how much money they have.
Yeah, which again, in the 80s, that was definitely a stereotype that, for better or worse, we were embracing with open arms. The gold digger, lady. Yeah, that's funny.
Side note, apparently, speaking of gold digger, that Bill Belichick is, I don't know if you've heard about this because I know you don't do celebrity gossip. So Bill Belichick.
VJ from MTV?
Nope, that's Bill Bellamy. This is Bill Belichick, former coach of the New England Patriots during those Tom Brady years and whatnot.
So not only do I not follow celebrity gossip, I don't know anything about football.
So Bill Belichick is like 76 years old. I mean, he is old. He's like our parents' age or older. His girlfriend is like 23, 22, like right out of college. And she is trying to copyright the term or trademark the term gold digger. Isn't that great? I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, that's funny. All right. So what, are they going to bring like Kanye's Gold Digger album as like evident, like Exhibit A that existed like 20 years ago? Yeah, interesting. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to say my number 2. We mentioned the Fox network. This was, really the sort of the eye of the storm, if
I think I know who you're talking about.
In terms of horned up characters. Now, what's interesting is that who I'm thinking of here is a character on a show where we already have a character who is literally the embodiment of lust.
Yes.
We already have a what would you say, like an anthropomorphized emotion, or
yes, like Inside Out, yeah,
instinct, yes, going on, where lust is personified as
by
a man.
the guy who played Santa Claus in Home Alone.
Yes, the fake Santa in Home Alone. But that's not who I'm talking about, because there's a character on this show who is even hornier.
And he is your namesake.
Yes, I am talking about the best friend Jay, last name unknown.
Last name Nichols.
That's right.
I only know that because I looked it up for this podcast.
Yes, they do mention that, I guess, once or twice. Jay Nichols, played by Hank Azaria.
Yes.
On Herman's Head.
That's right.
Now, this is really, I feel like one of the reasons why this sort of trope came so easy to me is because there are certain sitcoms that were very formative to me that leaned on it hard.
Yeah.
And this was one of them. The fact that, like I said, in addition to having all these scenes inside his head where you have this character going, oh, look at the jugs on
Bazoombas!
her.
And then they'll cut to outside his head and Jay will be going, Bazoombas!
Yeah, they still felt the need. Does Herman have like a nerdy, shy friend? Not really. I mean, Louise, I guess.
Louise, yes.
No, his only male friend anyway, his only friend outside of work, sort of, because Jay's at work too, is just another horn dog. And so you get, pushing the plot forward, whether it's in his mind or like the events around him, there's always somebody encouraging horniness.
Yeah. I kind of love that Herman's Head is the last time anyone from The Simpsons had to work.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Hank Azaria, he's a really good actor, I think.
He is.
Undersung. He had a main role in this movie, Cradle Will Rock, from the 90s.
Oh!
The Cradle Will Rock, we watched it together. It's a
Did
movie.
I fall asleep?
It's a movie about the federal theater program during the McCarthy time.
That's what that was called. I really like that movie.
And yes, he plays this real life guy. It's a movie that's historical, but definitely plays fast and loose with the history. And he plays this real life guy who was like a left leaning gay playwright in the 50s, and his play was directed by Orson Welles, but it got shot down by the McCarthyist government. Yeah, and all that kind of stuff. And it's the one time I can really think of as he was front and center in this huge cast, and it was kind of an indie movie, but really, really good.
Who was the director of that?
Tim Robbins.
Oh,
yeah. And certainly he's been around ever since then, but I always thought that he deserved a more like prominent role in the, ecosystem.
No, he was a dog walker on Mad About You, and he was married. That's where he met Helen Hunt, and then they got married, and then she was like Oscar winner, and he was like, the guy who does funny voices that's married to the Oscar winner for a long time.
And he's been in tons of things, and he's got that show Brockmire, and he does lots of stuff and keeps busy. But again, I thought he deserved to be a major star. But what I was thinking about was, having said all that about how good he is, does he humanize Jay?
No.
It's not like the way Michael J. Fox makes us softens the character.
Yes.
Like, he's still a total dick, but he just really has fun playing it.
Yes.
And he embodies that well, especially when you can see him in other roles. And there's sometimes is it Forgetting Sarah Marshall, or it might be the different one with Ben Stiller. There's some comedy from the early 2000s where he plays like the muscly like Greek guy on the beach that steals the girlfriend or something. Like, he can totally be that interloper, but he can also be the shy sort of, like, he can do it all,
Yes. All right, here we go. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
So you were talking about the idea of being able to humanize these guys. or these women. I feel like the women are just already humanizing because it's like a different joke when the woman is horny. But the men can definitely just go down this like dark path. And I really struggled with my number one. I was going back and forth and back and forth. And it was the idea like Fonzie, like Henry Winkler doing Fonzie, being able to humanize, that was the thing that kind of broke, the straw that broke the camel's back here. I was like, nope, I am not going for characters where the actor humanized them. I want these lotharios to be just that. Yeah. And so my number one is not who you might think it is, because that person is very charismatic and pulls it off really well. My number one is Dan Fielding. Okay, yeah. From Night Court.
Okay, so are you contrasting it with, are you saying Barney from How I Met Your Mother would be? Okay, fair enough.
Barney Stinson, and look, I'm going to say Dan Fielding, played by John Larroquette on Night Court, there is nothing below that grossness. He is a smarmy attorney. We only ever see him at work. He is constantly defending or prosecuting hookers, and then also trying to hit on them at the same time. There no redeeming qualities. No, none. He's gross, always gross, and that is what I wanted in my number one for this category. Now, where you're talking about the characters that can do what Michael J. Fox does, that's Barney Stinson, right? Barney Stinson, he is the quintessential, right? We have Barney Stinson because we had Fonzie. You know what I mean? Fonzie walked so Barney could run, and I think he, like I said, I went back and forth, but him ending up married to Robin, him being a secret romantic, all put it into the category that you can be a main character and never have depth, and that is what you get in Dan Fielding.
Yeah, How I Met Your Mother decided not to do that. For better or worse, yes. After a few years, they were like, let's change things up.
For better. Yes, and I was pissed off by the ending and what they ended up doing and getting rid of all of that greatness that they built with him.
Yeah, as for Larroquette in Night Court, totally. The only reason why he's not on my list is just because, again, I just wasn't a big Night Court head, so I just don't have as much personal connection to him. But I remember the one that we watched pretty recently, the one where somebody, Bull becomes a genius and gets sent to the science lab or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, where
and on the new one, he's playing the same character, only he's 900 years old.
Yeah, Larroquette's whole role in that story was just to wander around and be like, oh, do you do sex experiments here or something?
Exactly.
That was one that was particularly inessential to it. And it is, that is the structure of a show like that. It's not a family plus a neighbor or something. It's this ensemble where everyone's he's the horny one, she's the smart one. And so it's that is the only thing that you need him for. Yeah, I would say that when you mentioned before you thought that Quagmire was primarily the first guy you mentioned from
Charlie
Empty Nest, yeah, I sort of see it as almost a trinity of, in the 80s, that guy, the neighbor from Empty Nest, John Larroquette in Night Court, and the guy from Larry
from Three's Company.
Yes.
He was Jack Tripper's best friend.
Yes.
And then eventually he moved upstairs.
I think he's kind of the model for Leisure Suit Larry, the computer game. He's just got that saggy, afro type hair, that cheesy hair. And again, I wasn't super into that show, so I don't have the connection to him as some of these other characters. But when you talk about the 80s, horned up neighbor or friend or whatever that pokes his head in the window and says, I got a date with a stewardess.
Yep.
I feel like those are the holy three.
Oh, 100%. Yep.
And Larroquette has that interesting, he famously, I don't know. I think it was before Night Court, maybe. He does the opening narration to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the thing where he says, you know, if they had lived very long lives, they would never have expected to see such of the macabre and the mysterious. Because he's got this really distinctive voice.
Yeah.
And so he, like, I don't really know much about that guy. I don't know if he's another one of these cases where he was an amazing actor that they happened to luck into, but he certainly has a look and a voice and everything that's like, okay, like he has a certain thing going for him that, you know, I think for me anyway, of those three, I'd rather watch him than the curly haired guy.
Oh, for sure. Well, and he's able to be a main character in an ensemble show that doesn't end up having any depth, but is, unlike Jay in Herman's Head, like brings something to it. You know what I mean? There's a little bit more there. Part of it is just that the show ran longer. And I think both John Larroquette and Hank Azaria are good actors. I think Hank Azaria is a better actor. Yeah. But I think in this case, it's just like John Larroquette as Dan Fielding he's a Lothario and he's also a dick. Yeah. So, and he's a lawyer. So it's like all of this stuff kind of mixed in there together.
And very little of the show, like especially very little of the show's like heart has to rest with him.
No,
like,
none of it does.
Yeah, they can just have it be about the maid, like the woman who was pregnant in the episode we watched. Her stories can be when they want a little bit of humanity, and then he can come in and be like,
and Bull's stories, and then the other woman the other bailiff.
Harry Anderson.
Exactly. All of them.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good stuff.
All right. Who would you have as your number one? I'm so curious.
Well, again, I sort of went almost the opposite way, where I'm thinking of the more gentle side of lust, if you will. But this is somebody...
This is why you couldn't pull tail, but I was out there banging homies.
There you have it. Mystery solved. So... when I was a young man, I've mentioned many times how I looked to the television to sort of learn the ways of life, and I had a lot to learn from this show in particular about ways of the heart. And, you know, they were one of the...
But these aren't matters of the heart.
Well, one of the young ladies on this show I've talked about at length because she aroused a lot of interest and
oh
feelings.
My God, are you kidding me right now with your Italian stallions?
Well, hang on. But
if you go buttons.
But in the same show, you had the plot constantly being pushed forward by a horny best friend.
Oh, yes.
Who was saying we need to go to the sorority party because Lambda Sigma is having a wet t-shirt contest and you can't stay and teach the kids lessons because
you gotta go with Buttons.
I'm talking about Buttons Lembeck from Charles in Charge as portrayed by Mr. William Ames.
That's right. Who is now like Jesus man.
Bible man, yeah. I don't think now. I think that even is like 20 years ago. But yeah, look, what can we say? We're talking wacky best friends. He's at the top of the list. He definitely, again. But
we're not talking wacky best friends.
He is... His horniness is not, he is not he's not like Jay or Barney. He's not like, love him and leave him. I can't. But at the end of the day, he's still like,
no, he's more like a Joey Tribbiani. He's like dumb and driven by his peen.
Yes, he is very dumb. I would say that is pretty much his defining characteristic as the series went on, especially. I could argue that at the start of it, he really fits into this category.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is just meant to be Charles's wild friend.
First couple of seasons, especially, this was, you're right, like that was who Buddy was. Before we knew Buddy was Buttons, that was when he really was like, he was the party friend. He was wearing the Hawaiian shirt. He was like, hey, we're going to go to the toga party. Hey, there's hot girls over there. If Charles got up while on a date to go pick up a phone call or get the pizza from the counter, he would sit down next to the girl and take her.
Yeah, picking up the scraps. perhaps. Yeah, and it's like, again, going back to the id and superego thing, it's like a show like that, a perfect example where Charles is meant to be the ego. He's meant to be the guy you relate to. He's has his own sense of right and wrong and a head on his shoulders, and he's, struggling to sort of make sure that he keeps sight of that and does everything right. And then you've got Buddy as the devil on his shoulder, always telling him, go to the sorority party, bang the girl, who cares about anything else? And then the rest of the show is the superego, is the parents and the grandpa and all that, and his college professors, and the whole thing is a jumble that Charles has to figure out, he has to navigate.
Yeah.
And so, Buddy, again, I have talked at length about how Charles in Charge basically,
raised
sort
you.
of set the table, for what teenage life was going to be. And I could only hope of having, a friend that was as horny and lovable as Buddy. So, I don't know. I guess we've already sort of put them in order, so it's silly to say, like, who our favorites are. But, I feel like, if anything, it just sort of shows you, kind of like we said at the beginning, like, they all, some of it's more like you're on one end of life and it's like, oh, all of the curiosity and the hormones and the striving. And then you have, like, you're in the thick of it, right? Like Jay and all of them. And then you end up like Blanche going, oh, I remember the good old days, right? I remember everyone I banged.
Well, so, but I wonder for some of these people if that's their true arc, or if they become something else, or they turn into something else as we age. We live many lives within our lifetimes, And so, but what the reason I thought that this was a fun one to do is because I feel like right now we're in this mode, we're in this world where it's like characters like Barney Stinson, characters like, David Leisure from Empty Nest. We've called them odious. We definitely have said, oh, you couldn't get away with that now. Oh, that would be canceled. And yet there's humor there. There's joy to be found there. And I think that it is an interesting archetype. It's an interesting character study to think about. Like, we probably don't have someone who is singularly like this in our lives. But I can tell you that, like, I personally have been singularly like this for a period of time for some people. You know what I mean? And I think that that's true. And I think that we can all kind of give some of these shows a little leeway in certain ways, and still, with an eye on, let's not go back to the nastiness, and let's not be Fox in its early days, let's not. But there's fun here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, frankly, a lot of times I think I'm trying to paraphrase the famous quotes, the rumors of the death of horniness have been greatly exaggerated. It's
that was a bastardization of Mark Twain, real bad.
It's like, the details of comedy are always changing. Nobody's going to get locked in jail, but you might get a dirty look if you made the same exact joke you made in 1984 or 1998 or even 2007 or whatever. But that doesn't mean, like, the idea that, in modern times, like, you can't be lusty, or you can't be, you can't get away with being horny or anything like that. No, you can't harass people. That's true. But if we're talking about...
But there was definite, like, John Larroquette, Dan Fielding definitely harasses most of his colleagues.
Sure.
And every single random character that's on one episode.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that Jay and Herman Head says doesn't hold up too well. The younger characters, I feel like, get more of a pass because they're young, they're trying to figure it out. But again, it's like that those people will always exist because, like we keep saying, it's a part of our basic psyche. They'll always exist in comedy because it's funny. Like, if you actually go and look at what's on in the movies and on Netflix and stuff, what they're making now, they're still doing stuff about sex and horniness and everything just as much. It's just, the way that you go about it changes. And frankly, like, it changes for the better. Like, the humor gets sharper, even if it's like, oh, gee, I guess it's not funny if we go, huh, bitch, or whatever. Right. Yeah, that joke doesn't work anymore. Doesn't mean you're not allowed to do it. It just means, like, it got played out and we've moved on and come up with I don't know, we just have, like, a different take. But I think, as our more recent sitcoms have shown us, the horny characters are alive and well, and we'll continue to discuss them for years to come. All right, so much for the sitcom Horndogs. What are we talking about next week?
Next week, we're calling the babysitter, Jay. We're going to watch Mary Tyler Moore, Season 2, Episode 18, Baby Sitcom, Clarissa Explains It All, Season 4, Episode 12, Babysitting, King of Queens, Season 3, Episode 9, Twisted Sitters, and Bob's Burgers, Season 8, Episode 4, Sit Me Baby One More Time. Lots of puns going on there.
Yep, babysitting is just, it lends itself. So yeah, the sitcom Babysitters are next week, and until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.